So on Monday nights, we have a new tradition in our household. We've probably been doing it for about half the school year, where we let our eldest stay up a little bit later and we watch at least one episode of the TV show The Goldbergs. Sometimes she can con whichever parent is with her into two. Usually that's Travis. I'm a little more excited to have them go to bed and be out of our hair than he is. But it's just a really sweet time where we get to be one-on-one with one of the girls. And so if you haven't watched this show, it's your standard sitcom about a family. They have 3 kids, and they go about normal life, and sometimes, of course, it's exaggerated or more hijinks than normal happens, but it's a really wonderful way to just kind of talk about things and have topics brought up naturally that we wouldn't necessarily cover with Jamie. So recently, we were watching an episode where Adam's girlfriend, that's the youngest son, goes away to college, and the girlfriend comes back different. The meta joke in this is that she got recast in that episode. So it is actually a different person who comes back. But she comes back from college not as nerdy as she was before, and a little bit goth and just kind of different. And so through the episode, there's conflict because Adam wants her to be a geek again. He wants to do nerdy stuff with him, but he doesn't really use his words to tell her that. And so then she gets mad and annoyed that he is trying to control her and change her and that sort of stuff. So they both just wind up unhappy. And so what Jamie asked, she said, well, who was wrong here? And I said, that's a really great question, because you could argue that neither of them was wrong. Maybe a little bit more Adam, because he was trying to be a little bit controlling, but she's allowed to change, but he also is allowed to be upset that she changed. They both need to use their words to explain how they're feeling in the moment instead of just fighting and getting mad and walking away from each other. But that's the part we don't like to do, the talking to each other part. It is easier to just get mad and walk away from something. It is harder to stick in it, to not assume things about the other person and try to figure out what's happening. So the question becomes, are you a conflict seeker or a conflict avoider? And I'm going to be 100% honest, I'm a conflict avoider. I do not want to do it. It makes me deeply uncomfortable. I think even for the conflict seekers, it makes you uncomfortable a little bit if you're honest. But I will run away from conflict if given the chance. And I don't recommend it. This is not me saying do as I do up here, because conflict avoidance is usually a recipe for something to get worse, to get messier, for the confusion and the argument to grow bigger. Usually by avoiding conflict, I wind up mad, the other person winds up mad, I feel sad and disrespected, the other person doesn't know it. So don't be like me in this. I have to really gear myself up for it. But I also would say you probably shouldn't be a conflict seeker either. We can probably identify this in ourselves or in others, those people who are kind of always itching for a fight. Travis, you might be needed. Who enjoy arguing or seeking something out. Those people who just jump right into it every time. So I don't know, probably not an avoider, probably not a seeker. What we should probably be, and what I think the Bible recommends to us, is to be a conflict resolver. To be there in it. Don't run away, but don't look for it either. Deal with it, preferably like adults should deal with it. In my reading for this week, I came across a story from another preacher that, Carlton, I'm going to warn you as our treasurer, I'm not going to do. So don't get nervous as I tell it. But the preacher was talking about this verse from Matthew 5. This is the one that was read first, where we are instructed to be reconciled with someone before we give our offering. So the preacher said, he told his congregation, he said, pull out your offering, or if you give online, a representation of your offering, and hold it in your hands and think, is there anyone I am in conflict with? Is there anyone that I'm not in right relationship with? Is there some grievance between me and another person? And this pastor said, do not hand that money in. Do not give that offering until that has been resolved. For the scripture very clearly says, do not give an offering if there's a grievance between you and another person. I'm sure this pastor's treasurer had a heart attack thinking about the offering plate that Sunday. Because this Matthew 5, it says that you can't be in a right relationship with God if you are not in a right relationship with the community that you are in, with the people around you, with each other. The invitation we have to follow Jesus is one of being transformed and being transformative out in the world. It's about doing something different, being countercultural, working together for the kingdom. Working together for the dignity and community and respect and accountability and responsibility for each other. One of the more common words for God that we use, specifically in the holiday season, is Emmanuel. And that means God with us. Us, a plural word. It's not God with me. That's not what we celebrate every Advent season. We celebrate God with us. Emmanuel, this baby born for us together. Communal, not individual. Us, not me. So then how do we do conflict in a biblical sense? Well, the author of Matthew was very kind and gave us some instructions. If we keep reading down to chapter 18, there is a list of steps of how to be in community, but also handle conflict together. He's talking specifically about if another member of the community sins, but a sin is a type of conflict. Being not in right relationship with each other or with God is what we are learning about here. And so I'm going to read it again because it's short and pretty clear. It says, if your sibling sins, go and point out their fault, just between the two of you. And if they listen, you have won them over. But if they do not listen, then take 2 or 3 more with you to serve as witnesses. And if they still refuse to listen, it says, tell it to the church. And if they refuse to even listen to the church, treat them as if they were a pagan or a tax collector. So it first says one-on-one. Give dignity to the other person and go talk to their face. Don't go to other people. One-on-one. But then if that doesn't work, if the conflict isn't resolved in that way, then get 1 or 2 other people. Don't get everybody yet. 1 or 2 other people to go and serve and witness and help. If the conflict still isn't resolved, go to the church. Now, scholars disagree of if that is, 2 people standing in front of the whole body airing their dirty laundry, or going to the leaders like the elders or some group like that. But it is an escalation each step along the way to more people for more help. Not necessarily to say, I'm only going to gather the people who think I'm right. That's cheating. But to gather people to help us resolve this together. I think an imperfect parallel might be first the individual, second with a mediator, and then third in the court system. And I say it's imperfect because we're not looking at legalism here. We are looking at community relations. But it is individual, mediator, and then a larger body. There's a saying that we learn about in church leadership seminars that says, conflict doesn't kill churches. Avoiding conflict kills churches. And that's not just for the church. The same thing is true of marriages, of relationships, of friendships, of coworkers. If you refuse to deal with something, it doesn't go away. It often gets bigger. So when you refuse to deal with the conflict, it's just getting bigger. And that's what does the damage, not the conflict. Conflict exists and is a part of life. How we handle it is what matters. I'm going to give a caveat that our elders and board members have heard a couple times as we are reading through this book together called I Think You're Wrong, But I'm Listening. The book helps us to talk about ways to reconcile and be together when we disagree on things. But what is important to know is that both parties have to be coming to the table honestly. Both parties have to be open to admitting where they are right, but also where they are wrong. They have to have honest intentions, not just a desire to win. Otherwise, the conversation isn't fruitful. If someone is coming disingenuously, the steps aren't going to work because both sides have to be willing to get better and to hear the truth. And I say that because sometimes verses can be used to clobber people, to say, well, you have to get along for the sake of harmony, when that is not harmonious if one person is being shrunk or not listened to. That's false. It's not true. So if it is not an honest conversation among two people, both at the table wanting to be better, it's not going to work. And so in those instances, you might need to walk away, or you might need to call in that extra person. Because what we hear at the very end is once we go through those 3 steps, if there is not a desire to be better, if there is not both people working to be hopeful together, then it says treat them like a tax collector or a sinner, or a pagan, I think it says. Treat them as someone outside of the circle and not forgotten and thrown away, because remember, Jesus loved to hang out with tax collectors and pagans and sinners. But there is a separation there. There is a space allowed to say, this isn't a relationship that's working. Both parties aren't here in hope and love. But what we hear is that we don't want to get there because we are a Christian community. We are working for wholeness in this world. And so one of those first 3 steps should work. Hopefully you never have to go past step 1 when we talk to each other, when we share openly and honestly, and when we listen openly and honestly. As Christ's followers, we are held to a higher standing. We should be transforming this world. We should be working towards communal harmony where our differences are honored. I loved what Tomas did with the kids today. We are all different puzzle pieces, and sometimes 2 puzzle pieces don't fit directly together. Sometimes you need a 3rd puzzle piece come in. Sometimes you need that God puzzle piece to come in. There will be conflict, but we have to deal with it. We have to be open and approach it. It is healthy to do so. I know my pastors and my chaplains and my counselors in the audience know this intimately. It's what we do with it that matters. We see conflict throughout the Bible. If you think that the followers of God throughout history have never had conflict, I think we should read it again. Almost all of the letters in the New Testament are written because of conflict. A lot of times when Paul is writing to a community, if he's not trying to raise money, he is saying, you guys have been disagreeing about this. Here's what we should do. Here's how we should go forward. It's a known aspect of humanity from the beginning, but as I said, what we do with it is what matters. Verse 20 says that famous thing, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am there with them. Conflict is probably also there. There are multiple different jokes out there, some less PC than others, but that say, if you have 2 people, how many opinions do you have? 3 or 4, 10, right? Where there are people, where there are Christians, God is present, but there's also opinions and differences. So let's handle this in a biblical manner. We should seek reconciliation whenever it is possible and whenever it is safe. If that doesn't work, go grab someone, 1 or 2 people to come in and mediate and be a witness. And if that still doesn't work, bring it forward to the gathered body so that hope and healing and wholeness can be brought forward. I do want to add an unwritten secondary caveat that this sermon isn't directed at anyone. There's no bubbling conflict that I'm trying to stave off here. But it is an important part of our Christian life. You know, we've been doing this sermon series on friendship. It was supposed to end, but we're extending it since Grace is coming to worship with us next week. So we're doing how to disagree today, and next week, how to be different, as our Methodist friends are with us. So don't go to lunch and try to figure out what's happening in East Dallas. It's nice to talk about when we're doing pretty good, to give us the tools and skills if things do happen. These conflicts do happen. And it's not the conflict that kills us. It's avoiding it and refusing to face it that kills us. Let us give thanks for a puzzle piece that makes us all fit in one way or another. Will you pray with me? Great God, we are so thankful for the ways that you bring us together, each of us in our individual hopes and dreams and wants and needs. And we know that sometimes that is hard. Sometimes we disagree. Sometimes things bubble over. And so what we ask of you, Lord, is to give us the strength of character to face it head on, to be biblical in the ways that we interact with each other, seeking to recognize the spark of you that is present in each other, and to remember the ways that you blend us, not in spite of our differences, but because of our differences, into a richer faith tapestry. We give all thanks and praise to you. Amen. If you want to be a part of a community that is working to be biblical in more ways than one that is trying to be a community of different people serving God together, you can do so either by transferring your membership or saying yes to God for the first time. But if you would like to be a member of East Dallas Christian Church, I invite you to come stand down front with me as we all stand and sing hymn 602.